Welcome to Awesomely Bad Horror, the channel that talks all things horror, awesome, bad, and awesomely bad. This video kicks off the deep dive into the Friday the 13th, the TV series episodes. I did a video on this series as a whole, so if you haven't seen this series before, or if it's been a while, you might want to check it out. The first episode is The Inheritance, which introduces the main characters of the series, Mickey, Ryan, who are cousins, and Jack, a friend of their late uncle. And it also sets up the premise of the show. Mickey, Ryan, and Jack must collect cursed antiques and return them to a vault in the basement of their antique store to keep the world safe from their demonic evil. The first episode centers around retrieving a cursed doll. Now I know what you're thinking, and before anyone jumps to saying, "Oh yeah, an evil doll, how original," at the time the episode aired, possessed or cursed dolls were not the trope they are today. There was no Annabelle mania, and Child's Play, with perhaps one of the most well-known possessed dolls, would not even release into theaters until almost a year after this episode aired. This is not to say that the idea of evil dolls had never been done. In 1963, the Twilight Zone episode Living Doll featured an evil doll.
My name is Talkie Tina, and I'm beginning to hate you.
My name is Eric Strader, and I'm going to get rid of you.
You wouldn't dare.
Huh?
A few years later, there was an episode of the Alfred Hitchcock Hour entitled Here the Woodbine Twineth in 1965 that also featured a doll that was possessed and a sinister end for the little girl who owned it.
Who was it? Now you answer me.
You never believe me when I tell you things are real.
Now you tell me the truth, you hear me?
It was just me. Just me and Numa. Summertime all the time. There's apples and peaches. You can play anything you want to play, anytime you want to play. The jets are the stars, and the balls, the sun are the moon. There's candy canes, and everybody has a dog.
Never come back. Eva? Now don't you hide from me. You hear me?
There may also have been others here and there, but those are the two that seem to be the most well-known that I found while looking up evil dolls in TV, at least prior to this episode airing. Much like Tales from the Crypt, the characters, other than the main three, are usually less than sympathetic, and this episode is no exception. The Inheritance centers around Mary, a young girl who demands her father buy her a doll from the antique store. This demand comes after Mary interacts with the doll in the store and then sneaks it outside, where she's approached by a man who is somewhat threatening to her, and she witnesses the doll attacking him.
Be the best of friends.
Hey, where's your parents? This is no place for a little girl like you.
You better leave us alone.
You have a smart little mouth, too.
Go away. You can have anything you want, Mary.
Now, at this point, I could argue that the doll was protecting Mary, and that's how Mary saw it. So no sinister nature coming from Mary at that point. At this point, Uncle Lewis has decided to break his pact with the devil, so he refuses to sell the doll to Mary.
She did it. She scratched him and made him go away.
She's got quite an imagination.
Give me the doll.
How much is the doll? I'd be glad to pay you for it.
No such thing.
She's not for sale. Nothing's for sale in here.
After his untimely demise later that evening, the father returns to the shop in an attempt to buy the doll. At this point, Mickey and Ryan, unaware of the curse, are selling many of the antiques, and they sell the doll to the father. It's perhaps important to point out that Mickey was hesitant to sell the doll. She had an experience with it in the vault that maybe clued her in on the fact that it was less than typical, but at the time she was also pretty panicked, so she wasn't 100% sure what she saw, and also wasn't taken too seriously by Ryan.
This the one?
It sure is. How much is it?
Well, for you, I gave it to you for...
I'm sorry, that's not for sale.
What do you mean?
I mean it's not for sale. I didn't know you were putting it out. I'm really sorry.
Mickey, what are you doing?
I can't explain it.
No, what? This is no good. You said we gotta sell everything. This is everything, okay? Thank you very much.
After Mary is given the doll by her father, her stepmother becomes upset for Mary not following the rules at home, mostly putting away her toys, and takes the doll away from her and puts it in a cupboard. Mary chooses to go out and sneak the doll back out of the cupboard and is caught by her stepmother. Now, at this point, the stepmother is attempting to take the doll away from her again, and the doll uses its evil powers to move a roller skate behind the mom at the top of the stairway, and then Mary walks towards the mother, who is now freaked out by the doll because she's seen the doll move on its own, and the stepmom begins to back away, causing her to trip over the skate and fall down the stairs. Now, with this first incident, I could say that Mary was maybe naive or misled by the doll and didn't realize what would happen to her stepmother when she tripped over the skate. Mary seemed a little gleeful in what happened, but again, trying to see the parts of her that are somewhat sympathetic. However, once they got to the hospital, there's no question that Mary takes on the role of willing participant and even active participant in causing the death of her stepmother, as she takes the doll over to her stepmother and allows her to be suffocated. Mickey and Ryan did arrive just as the ambulance had arrived at the girl's home to pick up the stepmother, and then go to the hospital as well to attempt to intervene and collect the doll. But they're too late, and they arrive after the stepmother has already met her demise. Now, by this point in the episode, I'm pretty solid on the fact that Mary is no longer a sympathetic character. But for further evidence, after her stepmother passes in the hospital, her father brings over a nanny or babysitter to take care of her for a while. And she's very rude to the babysitter and very demanding. And when she doesn't get her way, she uses the doll to attack the baby.
Feels much better. We're not, sweetie. We want you to go away and leave us two alone.
Well, you know I can't do that, honey. Now, I really think you should lie down for a while.
Go away. Get out of my house.
Calm down, Mary.
You know what to do, Mary.
Around this time, Mickey and Ryan arrive at the house, and this distracts Mary, probably also saving the babysitter's life in the process, as the babysitter is now unconscious, and Mickey and Ryan split up to attend to her and chase down Mary with her doll. Mickey approaches Mary at the local playground, and Mary jumps on a merry-go-round, and Mickey follows, only to have the doll start to spin the merry-go-round faster than humanly possible, putting Mickey and Mary at risk.
Mary, the doll's not your friend!
Ryan jumps on and manages to get the doll away from Mary, and the merry-go-round slows down, and seemingly the evil has been vanquished or at least neutralized for the moment. And, at least momentarily, for the last few minutes, Mary seems to return to the sweet girl that she was at the very beginning of the episode, which might indicate that without the impact or the influence of the evil doll, Mary would not have done or behaved in any way that was evil or sinister on her own. Mickey and Ryan return to the shop, and Jack locks the doll into the vault.
Fortunately, once the objects were cursed, they can't be destroyed, so that's the best place for them. Locked away where no one else can get their hands on them, and vice versa.
So much for innocent playthings.
What do you think's gonna happen to Mary?
Oh, good shrink ought to be able to fix her up in 20 years.
Mickey and Ryan realize that they now must collect all of the cursed antiques that their Uncle Jack sold, as well as any that they sold before they learned of the curse.
Maybe we should change the name of our place. What do you think?
I've always been partial to the name Curious Goods myself.
This means we have to get back everything Uncle Louis sold. Every pin, every tie tack, every stick of furniture. Not to mention everything we sold.
Great inheritance, huh?
Where do we begin?
Oh my God.
And that brings us to the end of the first episode. Now for my thoughts on the episode. Honestly, it's not one of my favorite from the series. It's one of the ones I remember the most, possibly because it was the first episode, maybe because of the creepy doll factor, but as we get further in the series, I will tell you about episodes that I do consider favorites. However, that being said, it was well acted overall, and while child actors can be hit or miss, the actor that played Mary, Sarah Polley, did an excellent job. And she's continued to act, although it seems like, based on her IMDb, she may have taken a break over the last 10 years or so, but does have something in production. You might also recognize her from movies such as Go, Dawn of the Dead, and Splice. As far as a pilot episode, I do think they did a very good job introducing the central characters and setting up the premise of the show, and giving a taste of what to expect for the series. So overall, I definitely rate this as an awesome on the scale of awesome, bad, or awesomely bad. This is definitely a solid awesome, and I do recommend you check out this series again if you haven't. And please check back soon for the next video I'll post, which will go over episode 2 of the series, in which the trio will find out if the pen really is deadlier than the sword. Until then, be careful where you shop.